The time is just headed for 9:24 as we continue into the second half of this morning's edition of News and Views. And still to come on the show, we'll be talking shortly to the Director of Vision Tactical, Yaseen Theba, and also we'll be talking with award-winning author and activist Rashida Khan, talking about the Gaza facing the worst orphan crisis in modern history. And also, we'll get hold of Lindiwe Sisulu talking about Donald Trump and responding to the 30% tariff hike on South Africa. And what does this actually mean for the relationship between South Africa and the USA? But right now, to the Director of Vision Tactical, we're talking about Vision Tactical slamming the proposed firearms bill. Yaseen Theba. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Yaseen.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Juma Mubarak to you. Welcome. Jazakallah khairan so much for your time. Now, we know that this proposed firearms control amendment bill has been a very, very sticky point. But just before we talk to you about your concerns and what Vision Tactical is actually warning about, let's just try and understand what are some of the key issues in terms of the amendment or to this bill.
Well, firstly, recommendations and amendments that they're aiming at is firstly so vague that the interpretation is left to so much of scrutiny, and it just doesn't make sense for them to implement. Our issue is we in an environment where we're pretty regulated already, and if the intention is to basically tighten up and to get private companies to comply, then these recommendations are just a number of burdens for companies that are already complying. Instead, what we are saying is that SIRA and the South African police should enforce the laws that are already there on companies that are not complying.
Yes. Now, when you're saying vague, what is vague about this amendment bill, and how is this likely to impact on you yourself, a security company like yourself?
Just to give you an example, the amendments mention that on firearm ammunition, it refers to no more than a reasonable amount of quantity of ammunition. I mean, what would define a reasonable amount of ammunition? We live in an environment where protest action can start. We know that at any given point we have to be ready for protest action because we see how protest things can come up at any time and how people can mobilize, and how do we then protect assets in community in those situations. We need to be prepared at all times. And then it also goes on to say that even if we are using rubber bullets, for example, we need permission because now rubber bullets is now deemed as a different class of ammunition. And if we're using rubber bullets or even tear gas in this case, or a taser, these are standard security, private security equipment that we use when we are on the ground. It's now saying that we need to get special permission for that, which makes it impossible. I mean, we often respond to scenes where people are mobilizing, where Zamazamas are attacking. If we're using now a high caliber firearm, the new acts suggest that security companies cannot own high caliber firearms, and if they do, we need special permission for that. While there is regulations already that are there with regard to competencies, how it's issued, when is it being issued, what sort of training those security officers, those regulations are already there. Makes it very difficult for us now to say, okay, we need to give notice because we're going to attend to a scene that's going to happen next week. We live in South Africa where the threat of violence and these suspects are coming towards the communities, coming towards shopping centers, churches, schools, threatening communities on a daily basis. And basically, there's no time to sort of give notice to the authority to say that we are going to deploy this sort of firearms to these scenes when we don't know what lies ahead of us in the next hour.
Well, certainly, Yasin, and I think we've seen a lot of evidence of this where we've seen in the past, even with regard to protest action, where we've seen even the SAPs obviously not having sufficient ammunition on their own, where security companies had to actually step in and assist and provide SAPs with ammunition. Now that they're talking of reducing the quantity of ammunition that a licensed firearm holder may possess, or licensed security companies like yourselves should possess, obviously is a matter of concern. And at the same time, I know biggest problem is in terms of how this is going to empower criminals, how this is going to endanger South Africans. I mean, just during the week, or was it last week, that cash in transit robbery that took place in Durban, in Kwamashu as well, and one can see the high caliber weaponry that was used. And this is how bold these criminals are, and in terms of the type of weaponry that they are actually using at the end of the day. And once again, your concern is, more importantly, is to be effective enough to respond to and combat crime. And this obviously is going to provide limitations should these amendments go through.
So, we look at these regulations, and we understand that the industry needs to be regulated, because, I mean, there was the Sandton incident where security officers pulled out firearms, and there were high caliber firearms, and things like that need to be regulated. We are all in agreement that those things need to be regulated. But when these regulations, these very regulations, are there to purge the harmful companies, make it more difficult for the registered regulated companies. The same regulations that are being drawn up is actually destroying companies that are there protecting communities. When we look at our schools, our shopping centers, these regulations suggest that high caliber firearms can't be there. We know that suspects are walking into malls with AK-47s, shooting at public, dispersing public. We can't protect public spaces if we don't have the same firepower like the suspects. It's a fact. It makes it very difficult for us to fulfill our contractual obligations, not only to our clients, but also to our communities, and also to support law enforcement where they can be. We know police already are restricted with resources. We can't count on police to secure shopping centers in schools and hospitals. The private security industry filled that gap, and without the right firepower, we basically sitting ducks when the suspects come in.
Yes, and also I know another major point of contention was the potential removal of self-defense as a valid reason for possessing a firearm, because that is obviously another sticky point. But again, just coming to Vision Tactical, in terms of your recommendations for the government, and for these amendments to apply a balanced approach as far as firearms control is concerned, what would some of the recommendations be, Yasin?
Look, we've been very, very clear. This still needs to be discussed. These recommendations need to be interrogated. We need to be sitting, and I mean, the case studies are there. So I think there's still a lot of engagement that's going to take place. Again, these are just suggested amendments to the regulations. We over the past few days and over the next few weeks, I'm sure there's going to be a number of discussions with FIRA, with SAPS, with the Minister's Office, and a number of engagements on various platforms, so that we can thresh this out and basically come up with come up with recommendations that can regulate the industry, so that the concerns of the minister, of course, can be dealt with, and of course FIRA can regulate it. It makes no sense, like the city's recommendations for CCTV cameras. It makes no sense to have all these bylaws and have all these recommendations and regulations if it's not being controlled. What we are saying is, rather, let's get proper implementation and policing on the current regulations, and compliance on the current regulations within the industry, then have far more regulations and no one policing it.
Well, certainly, and also I think I've read that there are certain issues that are of concern as well. The whole question surrounding illegal firearms, targeting illegal firearms, uh, curbing this illegal gun trade that is taking place. And I know one of the biggest issue again is about law enforcement and how strong is our law enforcement in terms of resources, in terms of support as well. So, these are also some critical issues that one needs to consider.
True. I mean, we know that illegal firearms is a major issue in South Africa. We saw the amount of firearms that were destroyed in recent months when the minister announced the crime stats. Of course, this is a concern, and I mean, if the private security industry, if there is mechanisms there to basically drop those stats of the illegal firearms in and around our streets, in our townships. We need to work together to solve that problem. But the recommendation, like having each firearm tracked, I mean the new SIRA Act proposes that each firearm must be tracked. I don't know of a device that can track all the firearms, without making it bulky. We know that suspects come with signal jammers and um, things that make it very, very difficult. But I mean, again, it's about consultation. If they're recommending tracking all the firearms, they need to recommend what sort of technology is going to be used to track all the firearms. And of course, it mustn't be something that's so expensive because I mean, we know the police firearms are not tracked. So I mean, we're working in the same environment. And if those suggestions are being made to the private security industry, then I mean, it's something that the police should also be looking at.
Well, Yasin, let's leave it at that, and I'm sure we will follow developments. But for now, we thank you. We say Jazakallah to you for taking time out with us this morning right here on Salam Media. All the best to you, and have yourself a wonderful Jummah ahead, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Walaikum salam.
Director of Vision Technical, Yasin Theba, with us this morning, and a quick break, and we'll be back.